It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. Today, my guest is Troy Meachum, CEO of ACR Supply. The company was founded back in 1977 by Troy's dad, L.C. Meachum, and he joined the company straight out of college in 1980. Although the company's focus is to serve the HVACR industry through wholesale distribution, Troy has gained a passion over the past decade to make a positive difference for Christ in the lives of their employees, their customers, and their vendor partners. To enhance their focus on ministry, ACR has also partnered with Corporate Chaplins of America, as well as joined the C12 Group family. Troy Meachum, welcome into the corner office.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful to have you here. And, we talked a couple of weeks ago, and I've gotten to know your industry a little bit through one of our other C12 partners up here in the Northeast, and really looking forward to getting to know you better and, of course, your path to the corner office with ACR Supply.
Yes,
Let's talk a little bit about the early days.
Sure.
I know this is a family business, your second generation. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up and, what your early family life was like.
Sure. I grew up in Durham, North Carolina. My dad was a single father for a couple of years, raising two little rascals, me and my sister. And
younger sister, older?
Yeah, she's older. And he was married later on. I have a wonderful stepmom, and so we moved around a lot, and we were young. And then about when I was I can't remember the exact year, but it was my father decided to kind of go out and do his own thing and begin his own business, and a lot of forethought and a lot of time was put into that. And in 1977, in March the 18th, my 16th birthday, believe it or not, he received a phone call. And we were going out to dinner for my birthday, and he received a phone call and was told that he was being let go from his current job as they knew he was not happy and wanted to go do his own thing. Yeah. And so we were all kind of shocked, but
launched into it,
man. Yeah. He hung his own shingle out, and
good for him.
And the rest is history.
Yeah. Now, did he work in the industry prior to finding?
He did. He worked in the industry for 21 years for another distributor, and learned the industry and learned it well, and had a huge following in our industry. And that led to a very successful launch of his business that he birthed.
That's awesome. And you joined a little bit later, and we'll get that in a minute.
Sure.
But let's talk a little bit about some of those early years, particularly when you're moving around a lot. And, growing up with a single father, particularly at that time of the life, was probably a little different than most, right? In terms of kind of your peers and so forth. What were some of the lessons learned? What were some of the things that Dad, taught you as a kid that have stuck through to today?
Perseverance. I guess difficulty is always going to be part of our lives, and as long as you let those things define you, is how you respond to them is what's so important. And I saw my father go through a lot of stuff. I mean, he went through a lot of difficulties, and just but he continued to persevere. I was so blessed because my dad's one of those men who was just solid. He was a rock and stable and consistent. And he was always there doing what he needed to do to make sure he's providing for us, and just being there emotionally, spiritually, and then watching him in his professional life. It was pretty awesome. And so I guess one of the part of his legacy, and he's still alive.
Busy.
Part of his legacy is that he is hopefully the Lord willing, we're carrying that legacy on through through to the next generation, and hopefully my son, the next generation. But a legacy of perseverance and just hard work and loving the Lord and remembering that He's in control of all things anyway. So we're trying to glorify Him. We're trying to glorify Him in what we do and how we do it.
Yeah. Now, Troy, was your father a man of faith when you were born?
Yes, he is. He's got amazing testimony. His testimony, he's actually, when he was young, they actually, my grandmother and grandfather were too poor to tithe, didn't have enough finances. And so the way they tithe at their local churches, they would clean the church on Wednesday nights after the service was over. And one particular Wednesday night, as a young man, he was cleaning the actual, I guess the bronze cross in the sanctuary. And by himself, and mom and grandmother and grandfather were somewhere else, and the Lord just really spoke to him. And it was that night he gave his life to the Lord right there by himself in the sanctuary. It's a great story.
Wonderful story. And you mentioned, it was a single father. Was your mother not on the scene? Did she leave the family or leave the?
Yeah, my mother left when I was a year and a half. My sister was 3, and she left and moved out of town, and we had a chance to visit with her just a few brief times before she passed away many years later from lung cancer. But it was one of the things. So she
wasn't an active part of your life.
Not at all. Yeah, and my father got married several years later.
Right.
And my stepmother, and very close to her, still are very close to her. Yes.
Awesome. Who are some of the other early influencers in your life? Were there coaches, teachers, Sunday school teachers? Tell us a little bit about those, Troy.
Yeah, probably one of the most impressionable teacher/coach I had was David Hummer in my school and junior high and high school. And he just kind of took hold of my life and me and just began to pour into me and help me believe in myself and coach me in sports. And it was just a wonderful man, his lasting impression in my life. And he was one of the early ones. And also
elementary school, what age was that?
Middle school, high school.
Middle school.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have a lot of memory of elementary school, to be honest with you, but that's the elementary school and middle school years are some of the worst in your life, I hear. I don't know, but try to forget.
But you remember those special teachers.
Oh, very much so.
Third grade teacher, I remember her name, kindergarten and a few others. So was he one that taught several different classes of yours, or was there a specific subject?
Several subjects, but most importantly, he was my basketball coach.
Basketball, okay.
And he, and like I said, it was just having the early years with some of the trials and stuff that our family had gone through. Sure. Having somebody that believed in you and poured into you, encouraged you was a big deal. Yeah. He was one of the first people outside of my dad who did that. It was really made a big impression on me in my life. And I remember him to this day.
Were you a good student, Troy?
Not really.
In the subjects you like, maybe.
Yeah,
right?
That's exactly right. So, I wasn't a huge fan of school. But it's like everything else. You look back on your life and wish you'd have really given a lot more effort. But I did enough just to kind of get by. Right. But there was a lot of other stuff mixed into that, and some of the home life stuff that we'd gone through, kind of complicated things. But more so. But what my dad did teach me is you only. I mean, it's about effort. You've got to put effort into anything. Nothing worthwhile ever comes easy.
That's correct.
So as I began to grow up and get a life, decide to do things with my life, and getting into high school and graduating from high school, I really began to put the foot on the gas pedal, just from a professional development perspective, and began to really learn. If I'm going to do anything in life, I've really got to put a more concerted effort into growing personally, professionally, financially, and later on even spiritually.
Right. Well, you mentioned basketball. Other sports or music, theater, anything you pursued middle school, high school?
Baseball, soccer, and basketball. Yes, sir. I played them all, and I enjoyed them. I was probably your average athlete, maybe average to lower. I was not the what do you call them? You
persevered. You worked hard.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Stayed on that varsity team.
I was the one that gave the huge effort, but all the other guys had the talent.
Right. Cool. So, what about entrepreneurial things? Anything that you did, early on, either for pocket money or eventually to maybe help pay the bills?
Paper route and cut grass.
Paper route. Yep. Okay. Yep. That's very common. And I did, right? So I probably did those, single digits on the paper route, right? How old
exactly.
were you?
Yeah. I don't even remember. It was very young, but sure did. And it was and cutting grass as well. So
cutting the neighbor's grass.
That's exactly right. That's how you get started, right?
That's great. And what about, kind of W-2 jobs? Were there any official jobs that you had maybe in high school or a little bit later that you did as well?
Yes, it was.
What kind of things did you do?
2 jobs in high school. I worked at, actually 3, but 2 jobs mainly. I started off at Rose's department store.
Okay, right.
And then moved up to McDonald's.
All right.
Worked at McDonald's. So,
flipping burgers.
Yeah, I did. And then I moved into the world of retail and in my later high school years, retail at the mall, just clothing, that kind of stuff. And so enjoyed that as well. So,
what'd you learn in some of those early jobs? McDonald's, Rose's,
The big one for me is being an extreme introvert as a young person.
No,
I really did.
That surprises me, Troy. I would have not thought of you as an introvert. Just based on our past 9 minutes here.
I can promise you I was the extreme introvert. Matter of fact, I have a copy of my school records, and some of my teachers were actually concerned because I used to like to go off and play by myself and not really socialize that much. I'll tell you this, and we can flash forward a little bit. My wife, who the Lord put in my life, she's an extreme extrovert. She's pulled me out of my shell, so we can give her all the credit. How about that?
Yeah, we always do that, right? We never folks that compliment our skills.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good to know.
But let's see. What was I saying? Early on, I was an introvert and didn't really socialize a whole lot. But what happened is as I grew up, started getting these jobs. Really pulled me out of my shell. That began to really have an effect on me, where I had to begin. I had to be intentional and interact with people. It's part of life, especially when I went to work doing retail. That was kind of a big deal for me because you were forced to talk to people and interact with them, and that was kind of something that really did change me. And
were you doing selling as well, or
yes,
were you back office? Good
on the sales floor stuff, not really doing stocking or nothing like that, but on the sales floor. So I kind of got a passion for it, believe it or not, and it was something that I really felt like I was pretty decent at, and it really brought me out of my shell. So that was early on some of my early career moves.
Right. Well, those are good things to do. I kind of followed the same route. Had a paper route, and then worked retail when I was in high school, and you learned not only how to fold sweaters but to interact with people, and some of those lessons of customer service early on have certainly stuck with me over the years.
Exactly.
You went on to college. Now, did Dad go to college, or were you the first in your family to do so?
No, he did not. And let's see. And just for clarity, too, I went to a community college and I got a degree in what we do. And that's the world of HVAC, so heating, air conditioning, filtration. And so I went
to. Was it kind of a vocational?
It was. It was Alamance Community College and ACC up here in the Burlington area of North Carolina.
And Dad was already in the industry a little bit.
He had been for a long time.
Had you been exposed to it? Had you done some work?
I was that kid. Yeah, I was that kid who would sweep the floors in the summertime and that kind of stuff, but not a whole lot of exposure to it.
Like
but everybody
got to know me.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. And when he started it, obviously helped with a lot of the construction of the store and that kind of stuff. But I was still young and still in the school, but yeah, that was I had limited exposure, but yeah, it was. But I was always kind of around in the summertime, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You and I graduated from college the same year in 1980, and it's I think you went to work for Dad right away, right? So
I did.
His business was already up and running.
Yep. In addition to that, though, I did work in this. I worked in the field, the service field, with a couple of our customers as well. So I was doing multiple things at one time. My dad wanted me to have some exposure that way, so that was very helpful. But yes, I did. I went to work full time with my dad in 1980.
What were some of those customer-oriented things that you did?
Well, just service technicians going out working on HVAC jobs, installing HVAC equipment, doing service work, repair work, those kind of things. And,
so your degree was somewhat technical then too, right? So
it was. It was. It was all about kind of what we do and just getting the basic understanding of the HVAC world.
Did it include business management as well and kind of how to run a business, or was it much just more technical?
Mostly technical.
Yeah, got it.
I went back later though because I found it very important later on when I decided to grow up many years later. I did go back and take accounting.
You made that decision? I'm still thinking about whether to make that decision.
Yeah. But the just going back and getting not a degree in accounting, but at least take an accounting course at the local community college in Durham. And so Durham Tech. And so I went back and took accounting and got a good grade in that because I really wanted to learn it. I knew I had to as a business person. And so I got some, I've been doing ever since then. continuing ed type of things all the time, especially around the area of leadership and development and those kind of things. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I tell you one thing, just as a side note, my dad do something early in my career. In the early 80s, he sent me to Dale Carnegie. And I know you've probably heard of that.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
That 12-week course, went through that. What a game changer it was for me.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Really
Where did you do that? Was that locally?
It was in the Raleigh-Durham area. Yeah. We did it. And I still remember that my coach's his name was Jose, and I remember the impact that Jose had on my life.
Yeah.
And I actually, believe it or not, we did a leadership retreat about 5 years ago. I invited Jose back to do some leadership training for us. He was close to retirement.
Yeah.
And so it was just really special being able to spend time with him. But Dale Carnegie was just really phenomenal.
Oh, that's a terrific foundation. So how long did you have to be at the company before Dad gave you some leadership responsibilities?
Ooh. Just a few years ago. No. It was another defining moment in my life was when 1984. I've been pushing a broom, making deliveries,
You've
working
been in the
on
company
sales
about 4 years.
About 4 years.
Yeah.
He decided it's a sink or swim moment for Troy. And so he sent me to Chapel Hill, North Carolina. He built a building over there, and we put our first branch location up.
Wow.
And he kind of built the building and put a roof on. Very much so. Yeah. And we had no business over there at all. That we were starting with no business. And it was one of those defining moments in my life where I realized, you know what? I don't have anybody else to blame here. I got to do this on my own. So I did not want to be a failure. I wasn't a believer yet. That was 4 years later I became a believer.
Okay.
But one thing I did not want to do is disappoint my dad, and I did not want to fail. I did not want to be your stereotypical.
Had you managed anyone before that time?
Oh, no, not at all.
Oh, my gosh. So you had to go over there, open it, hire people.
Well, actually, believe it or not, I worked by myself for 2 years.
Okay. Wow.
So, that was interesting.
Yeah.
Not to take a lunch hour for 2 years, pretty interesting. But
lost some weight, probably got in good shape.
I had a standing order at the local Chinese restaurant. And that's not a joke. That's a true statement. I had a standing order at the Chinese restaurant. They delivered it to me.
That's the only way you would eat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so
I love it.
But it was really, my father knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah.
He's so smart.
How old were you at the time? So you were about 20 or so, 1920?
Yeah, right about there. So it was, like I said, 1980. 80. I started in 84. So about 21, 22 years old, 23, something like that. I can't remember exactly how old I was, but it was early on. And
so you started managing people there. So a couple of years then, you said, okay, now you can go hire a couple of people. Is that how it
did.
Out?
Yeah. One of the first team members I hired is a guy named Spencer Davis. And I think Spencer's actually he's working for the state of North Carolina now and close to retirement. Yeah, but he was a wonderful young man, and we started building the business, and we built it from zero to $1 million before I left and came back to the home office back in the early 90s.
And how many folks did you have when you left that organization, starting from scratch?
When I left the Chapel Hill Carrboro store, we had, I think, 3 people working in there.
Okay, got it. And doing $1 million plus, I'm sure, as well.
Yep, right up to $1 million, which is a big deal for this little redneck from North Carolina. I felt good about it, but I'd learned so many lessons. Oh my goodness, I learned so much.
Fantastic. Yeah. And tell me about some of those lessons, particularly as it relates to managing people. What were some of the mistakes you made? If you don't mind showing a little vulnerability, those are things that our audience loves to hear, as well as some of the things that maybe Dad taught you or others that you learned along the way.
Well, one of the things is taking personal responsibility for your mistakes and just taking responsibility overall. That's probably the biggest one. Yeah. And, you can imagine being a young guy. I'm not too detail oriented either. And you can imagine I'd made mistakes. I made clerical mistakes. I made some pretty bonehead mistakes. And what I began to learn was I can't blame anybody else. I have to take responsibility. Right. Yeah. And if I have weakness in a certain area, then I've got to develop a system or a process or some way. I've got to learn to be able to set up a system that somebody else or somehow those weaknesses are taken care of.
Sure.
And whatever it may be, a double check system, whatever it may be, you've got to be able to build systems that can help you in your areas of weakness. And that's what I did. We learned how to do that. And so
get metrics, right? and have ways in which you're measuring your results.
Exactly. So, and I want to remind everybody on here too, this is long before computers.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Long before cell phones.
Ledgers. We kept ledgers and handwritten books. Yeah.
The inventory was all manual, and we might have 10,000 part numbers, but there was all manual, everything. And so you can imagine the amount of labor and paperwork, but I would get up in the morning at 6 a.m. in the morning or earlier, go to our home office in Durham, fill a transfer order by hand, put it in a box, tape it up, make a copy of the notes I had taken and written down, and go and lay that down on our VP's desk and drive to Carrboro, unload the boxes, put it all in stock, and be ready to open for business at 7:30 every day.
Wow.
So in the afternoon, you process all that same stuff. What do I sell today? Build your next transfer. And so that's how we did it back in the days.
It's amazing how much time we used to spend doing that, right?
Oh, my word.
I remember the old hand crank calculating machines, right? Or adding machines, they called them back then, right? Where you had to go through the numbers. Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
We had to cost invoices, price them. It's just, And so today when I do orientation for our new team members, I actually go through that process to tell them what it was like. And they're looking at me like I've got three heads, It's like
straight out of the Stone Age.
They can't even imagine. But it was exactly how we started. So what it did, though, I'm going to go back and answer your question. It really built character in my life.
Right.
Adversity builds character, and it really did. It changed me. And the biggest lesson I learned is if it's going to get done, I got to do it. I've got to do it myself, and I've got to do it the right way, the best way I can. And if I make a mistake, learn from it and then grow from it. And so just the whole character building process was just instrumental in it really shaped me into who I am today.
Well, and also starting a branch as you did from scratch, you did all the jobs for the folks that came in after you.
Right.
And I think that's so important today. Kids don't understand that, in order to really report to someone, you have to kind of have someone report to you. You have to walk in their shoes. If you haven't done the job yourself, well, then maybe you should, before you're managing someone that does, because it's so easy not to be able to see what some of the challenges are unless you've really done it yourself.
I could not agree more. And my son is in the business now. We may talk about that later, but for him, I've told him you've got to learn every aspect of the business. And so, if I may just tell you real quickly, he's 25 years old now. But I told him he always wanted to go into business, just like I did with my dad. Right. But I said, son, being a son of the boss is really hard. I promise you, it's harder than what you think it is. And sometimes it's just going to flat out stink. And I said, so what you need to do is you need to go get your business degree, get another job somewhere else for at least 2 years, which would then be in 3 years. You get a promotion at that job, get a raise at that job, and then move out, and then you can apply. Now, Mama wasn't too happy for a while with me, but she thinks it was the right thing to do now. Right. But he did all that, and he's doing fantastic.
That's
and
great.
So
you just have one son, or any
just
other
one son?
Children?
Yep.
Okay.
Sure, just one son. Yep.
Yeah, fantastic.
The Lord blessed us with him. And then not long after that, a side note, my wife got cancer. And so the doctor said, we can't have any more kids. So I said, that's fine. So the Lord gave us one good old healthy kid. And he, like I said, he's doing fantastic. I'm probably a little bit hard on him at times, but he is. He's learning. He's learning the ropes, and he's learning from the ground up, just like it should be.
How's your wife doing now? Is she better?
She's fantastic. She's a 2-time cancer survivor now.
Oh my gosh.
She's doing wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
That's great news. So back to you. So early 90s, you returned to headquarters. Is that when Dad retired?
He's semi-retired back in the 90s. He was just kind of getting burnt out and tired, and I get it. And so he was in his 60s, and so he made me general manager of the company at that time. We had a store
kind of the number 2 then.
Right. Yeah. And we had a vice president, Lee Blakely, who had gone into business with my dad. He had no ownership, but he actually started with my dad, and then me and my dad. And so, he made me general manager. I came back to the Durham store. We had 3 locations total at that time, one in Burlington, Durham, and Chapel Hill. So I began to really focus on trying to develop decent processes. At that time, I had begun to really educate myself about leadership, communication, even managing conflict. And so I became a student of leadership, and so some early on influences like John Maxwell and others began to have an impact on my life. Obviously, all the Dale Carnegie stuff had, but I just became really kind of a nerd when it came to learning about leadership, and so that really began to affect my life and really began to make a difference. And I learned how to deal with conflict, how to lead people, how to love people, and probably the the biggest change we kind of jumped over a little bit was in 1988. I did accept Christ as my Lord and Savior.
Yeah.
And that
now, tell us a little bit about that seminal event.
That was transformational. My grandmother was very instrumental in that, and she kept asking me to come to church on the weekends. And I knew my father was a believer, but I didn't really want to have anything to do with his faith or anything else. And so, but she kept inviting me. So on it, I can't remember what day, what part of the year it was, but in 1988, I showed up at my grandmother's church at Greystone Baptist Church in Durham, North Carolina, and I found my grandma sitting down in the blue-haired section. Yeah. Went and sat down next to her, and she had this big smile on her face.
Oh my gosh.
Long story short is that day the Lord really, really spoke to me and convicted me of my lifestyle and where I was, and I was simply running from Him.
Right.
And so through the songs, I remember the song that day called "Holy Ground." Our choir sang it, and then the Lord brought a young lady named Kelly, who became a dear friend of mine, into my life, who actually went to church there. She witnessed to me, and she shared her faith, and finally encouraged me to go see Albert Smith. And Albert Smith was the pastor there at the time. Right. He was instrumental about 4 weeks later to lead me to the Lord, and it was a beautiful thing. And I mean, we all know what that does, but I tell you, I talk about it to this day, and I have the same sense of excitement now as I did back then, and what the Lord's done in my life. And
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Now, were you married at the time, or did you meet your wife later?
No, I wasn't. Okay. I was not married. I was still over in Chapel Hill running that store. And Kelly we became good friends and began to hang out. I started going to church there in the singles department. Right. And then I started praying specifically. I asked the Lord to bring a woman into my life I could spend the rest of my life with. And I was that single guy that was never going to get married. You know those guys?
Right. Sure.
And so
I was one of those for a while.
Yeah. The Lord answered my prayers, and about 2 years later, Sherry showed up in my life, and mutual friends of ours introduced us, and again, for that, the rest is history. We've been together ever since. We've hardly been a day apart.
How long have you been married to Sherry, Troy?
Let's see. You're going to test me now. 1991, March the 9th of 91.
Yeah,
so and we
coming up on 30 years.
Oh yeah, and so the Lord gave us Taylor, our son, just about a couple years later, and so in 93, and so I'm blessed. I have a wonderful wife and a wonderful son. And I couldn't ask for much more.
Thank you for sharing that. So back to general manager, you're kind of the number 2 in the organization. You've got Dad's longtime employee there. How big was the company at that time? How many employees? You said 3 branches, I think, right? Or 3 offices?
Yeah, about three. There was 3 stores total: the Durham store, which is with a warehouse as well, the distribution center, and then Burlington Carver. And I can't remember exactly how many people we had, but we probably were around 20 to 25 team members at that time.
And fast forward today, how big are you? How many stores? How many people?
We have 10 building locations, 8 storefronts, and we're right at 90 team members right now, 90 families we help support. So
quite significant growth. So when did Dad kind of fully take the chair and you stepped into the top shop?
So there's a story that's kind of an urban legend around here. Back in 1997, we've been in business for 20 years. And my dad was he was still the CEO. He still made all the final called all the final shots, and was still on the company, obviously. And but Lee and myself were pretty much running the company at the time. And
was he a little younger than your dad, or was he of your dad's
Yes, he
generation?
was. A few years younger, yes, sir. Yeah. And just also, I got to tell you this: he's just such a wonderful friend of mine. I mean, we became really, really close as well. Nice. But we were Lee challenged me. He said, Troy, he said, we've been in business 20 years. He said, I still got quite a few more years under my belt, and you got a lot under yours. He said, we got to decide, where are we going? How are we going to get there? What are we going to do to get there? What is our plan? And I thought, wow, I've never thought about that. And so we came together in a conference room at a local hotel talking about all this. And we decided several things that day. First and foremost, what we did, as 3 of us did decide, is we wanted to create a culture where our team members get up every day and want to come to work, where we want a healthy, I remember the phrase, healthy work environment. It's part of the phrase of our first mission statement we came up with. Right. And so as a result, I began to kind of look inwardly. You can put that stuff up on the wall all day long, but unless you're living it out, it means nothing.
That's right.
And so I started thinking, I'm not sure we have a healthy work environment. I mean, I feel like we're kind of like everybody else. I mean, remember back in the 80s and 90s, 70s, 80s and 90s, you was pretty much like everybody else. Lee and Dad had done a great job, but there wasn't anything exceptional about us or our culture. We were just kind of like the average run-of-the-mill business and culture. And I said, you know what? I want to get up every day and want to come to work too. And so we started sitting down. I sat down with some long tenured people, and I would say, okay, here's what's broke. Here's what we're going to do to fix it. And here's what the future's got to look like as it relates to them and their career there and or their contribution to the culture. And I said, if we can't get from here to here in this time frame, I love you, but you can't stay. It's too vital. And I love the phrase change people or change people. So I was all in. I was going to try to invest and help them change and grow and contribute to a culture. But that they had to do just that. They had to contribute to the culture and the profitability
had to be open
every
and
day.
willing to it.
Yeah. And so here's what happened. I had a number of people that couldn't change. And so we had to change. But we had some that did change. Matter of fact, our director of operations right now, Wayne Bullock, who's been with us over 30 years, he's one of them that did change, and his life has been transformed. And he's got a wonderful leadership role, doing a great job. But he'll tell you to this day that ACR and hopefully somebody speaking into his life made a major change in his life. And so, but about a third or fourth time that we either changed or they changed, people went, "Oh man, Troy's serious." I said, "Yeah, I'm serious. You want me to be serious. I want to get up every day and want to come to work, don't you? I don't want to be miserable." And so that began a journey for us that was just really, I'd say, breathtaking. And we were at that time, we were right at a little under $4 million in gross revenue. And so we began to put right systems, right people, right goals in place, and really focused on building that culture where people get up every day and they want to come to work. And so, and I just got to tell you, as a result, I think the Lord's really blessed us. We've got some phenomenal people, and we've gone from being under $4 million in 97 this past year. We just exceeded $30 million in gross revenue.
Congratulations. So it was 96, 97 the year when you became CEO and Dad fully retired?
Yeah, I was general manager. And so what happened was about almost 11 years ago now is when I officially bought the company from my dad.
11 years ago. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, great. So you've been and is Lee still around as well? Or
he retired a number of years ago, and we still stay in contact. And he's living in I think what you call a mother-in-law suite with one of his sons, him and his wife, and they're enjoying a lot of grandkids right now. So they're loving life.
That's great to hear. Well, we both got introduced through a wonderful organization called C12 that some of our listeners know about and others may not. And it's a Christian men's organization globally. We all are faith-based gentlemen and women, and looking for ways, of course, to always spread our blessings with others that are her customers, as well as those that we serve as employees and elsewhere. When did you get involved with C12, and what kind of an impact has that had on your development as a leader?
Wow, that's a loaded question. Okay,
I don't want to keep you on time here.
No, that's all good. It's all good. So 10 years ago, I was a member of Vistage. Some of y'all may have heard of that before, and it's a wonderful organization. Yeah. And my father actually at the time worked out in the mornings with another gentleman who he told him about C12 because we had not heard of it. I didn't know it existed. And long story short, he said, "You should go check it out, son." I said, "Okay, I will." And so I did. And Will Dixon's my chairman in the Raleigh-Durham area. And I went to visit, absolutely loved it. Yeah. And I got to tell you something, from Buck Jacobs all the way down to Don Barefoot and now Mike. Yeah. Specifically, Don, I would say, had a real impact on me just from the CEO level. He challenged me one day to, and so did Will, about ministry in the marketplace, about making a difference for Christ in the marketplace, and how much, how your workplace, how your employees or your team members, they are your ministry. That's right. I mean, they're part of your responsibility to minister to them and love on them and encourage them and be the light of Christ to them. And so that's when we changed our next version of our mission statement. And we began to really.
So it was about 10 years ago. When did you start getting involved in C12?
Yeah. Yes, sir. 10 years ago. Yes, Fantastic. Sir. And so you know this, and not everybody may know this, listen to the podcast, but just some of the tools they equip you with. I knew this. I knew the spiritual aspect of it would be rich and very good, and it is obviously is. And for the monthly devotionals and all that stuff, and just the camaraderie, and it's just absolutely wonderful. But I had no idea. This floored me. Just the practical wisdom and knowledge and tools you get through the curriculum and just through the people. Oh my goodness! And so, I mean, we've always said that we've never come up with a good original idea at our company, but we're really good at stealing others, and so that's what we've been doing with C12.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! And so much of what ACR Supply is today is simply a reflection of C12 and many of the things I've learned there, and other industry associations as well. But it's just been that's who ACR is much of what I've learned in and through C12 over the years. I mean, just the material is so practical, so helpful. You will never run out of good ideas.
No,
you have so many good ideas.
I agree with that. And I was a founding member of our group up here in Connecticut. We're almost 12. I think we're 9 or 10. And so my chair, who I've known over 40 years, so he and I go way back to one of our early careers. And he has me do a lot of ambassador work when we're looking at new potential, members. And I literally had coffee with a gentleman yesterday who looks like he's going to come visit our group. And he said, what's the number one thing? And I said, for me, it's having a non-executive board that is, based in my faith tradition, that can be honest with me. I can be vulnerable with them, and I can just lay it out on the line, and they're going to shoot straight with me. And I'll tell you, that's been one of the biggest advantages because, sometimes it's lonely at the top, right?
It very, very much so. And I tell you, for me personally, though, just the amount of wisdom in the room, just the amount of knowledge. And think about this for a minute. You suddenly have direct access with 10 to 12 top CEOs who love the Lord in your given market area, and you can talk to them, develop a relationship with them, have lunch with them, whatever. And I mean, it doesn't get any better.
No,
my goodness. I mean, and so these guys and ladies in our groups, they've become very close to me. And now I know if I really have something I need to run by somebody, or if I've got an issue, I mean, I can call any of them and just run it by. They run it by. Hey, what do you think about this? And it's wonderful.
That's terrific. Well, thank you for sharing that, Troy. Yeah. We talked a little bit about culture. Thank you for sharing that. Talk a little bit about the people. What do you look for when you're making bets in the people you invest in and hire?
Are you ready?
Let me know.
Oh yeah. It's pretty simple. I'll tell you, years ago, I read a Patrick Lencioni book, and I can't remember how many years ago. It was over 10 years ago. I know you're familiar with him.
Dysfunctional manager.
Yeah. Five dysfunctions. He's got the advantage. He's got, all kinds of 3 signs of a miserable job.
Right.
But he wrote a book years ago, and I can't remember the exact title of it, but it's something like the 4 or 5 Obsessions of a CEO. He used a phrase in there called humble, hungry, and smart. It was describing a character inside the book at that given time. And I thought, wow, I really like that. So I started using it a lot, right? Again, I stole another great idea. So we actually use that as our criteria for hiring now. Somebody has a real sense of authentic humility.
Right.
They have a desire they have a real sense of, they desire to put other people's needs in front of their own. Right. That includes family, friends, coworkers. Yep. They're hungry. They have a desire to grow personally, professionally, financially, spiritually. They have a healthy dissatisfaction with the status quo. And then also they're smart. They're people smart. And they have a desire to be good communicators. And so we started running with that many, many years ago. And then probably about, I think it was 3 years ago or something, that he wrote a new book called The Ideal Team Player. You may have heard of that one.
Right, I've heard about that. I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, The Humble, Hungry, Smart was the centerpiece of this book. So he took this idea from an old book, and from one of the characters in an old book, and he just put the centerpiece of this book. And man, it is absolutely, it's a must read. But The Ideal Team Player, it's really phenomenal. But that's exactly the model that we use for hiring. They even have an online assessment that we actually ask people to take ahead of time to make sure that they fit into 2, if not 3 of those categories in a real solid way. Yeah. But we know this, that if somebody has a real sense of humility, they have a desire to grow, like I said, and they're good communicators, they're going to fit into the ACR culture. Not only going to fit into it, they're going to contribute to it. Because here's what I learned a long time ago. Everybody wants to be a part of a great work culture.
That's
everybody.
Right. Yeah.
But not everybody wants to contribute to it. They want to reap the benefit of it, but they don't always want to contribute to it.
Yeah.
So we hold people accountable to contribute to it. Yep.
Yeah. That's great. How do you interview against that? I'm sure you don't interview every new person that comes in? Maybe you do. You get a chance to meet them along the way. But, what are some of the things that you ask, and how do you kind of get at some of those insights about those people? Because it's tough. Maybe you have a half hour, 45 minutes, or an hour with someone, and
we have a pretty in-depth recruiting and hiring process. Mm-hmm. We worked on it for many, many years. But when it comes to me interviewing, we try to interview anybody from 3 to 5 times, 3 to 5 different separate interviews.
Good.
Obviously, our HR director is part of that. But I still do. We're small enough where I can still interview for every person, whether it be a sales role, whether it be a management role, whether it be a truck driver role, whatever it is. I like to be a part of that because my focus is on the culture piece, right? And so what my approach is a little bit different. I really like to help people get relaxed and not make it a formal thing. I rarely do an interview in an office. Normally it's at a Starbucks. Normally it's somewhere. Sometimes I'm challenged geographically. I'll do it by phone. We spend time talking about personal life a lot, what I do, what I like to do, and asking what they like to do. Just kind of get them to a place where they feel very relaxed. They feel like there's a rapport there. And then I begin to really dive in, asking people, what does culture mean to them? What do they mean? How vital is culture to them as far as where they want to go to work? Describe what a toxic culture looks like to them. How do they contribute to the ACR culture? What do they know about the ACR culture? So that's the things that I really focus on personally. And that really, and once you get people relaxed and really comfortable and make them feel very safe in the conversation, you'd be amazed what people tell you. And it's been really, really an effective way. And we still make mistakes, don't get me wrong. I mean, we have our warts like everybody else, and we still make higher mistakes at times, but our percentage has gotten much better, if that makes sense.
Troy, you've been very generous with your time, and we always have one last question for all the CEOs on the show. And what's the career and life advice would you give to someone who has their eyes on their own corner office, or perhaps wants to succeed in a family business as you've done so well?
If I can backtrack just a little bit, me and my wife work with young professionals and have been for many, many years in our church and our community. I spend a lot of time mentoring. I tell people this all the time. I know that sometimes you're just simply trying to get a job, but I tell all these young pros who I coach and the whole interview process that you need to be interviewing the company that you're interviewing for. You need to be interviewing them as hard as they're interviewing you. And I give them and I equip them with the right questions, a lot of in-depth questions to ask about what's the culture like, what's it like to work there. And so that would be my first piece of advice for anybody is if you're going to work somewhere, you're thinking about going to work somewhere, you better interview them as hard as you can and as deeply as you can to find out what is it really like to be a part of that organization. But the biggest thing I think, and it kind of related to this, is to find out what the leadership's like and just really begin to find out what the leadership style is there. I would tell them that they really have their eyes focused on a role like that. They need you work on me first, right? The man in the mirror. So you begin to really pour into yourself, doing everything you can to grow in all these areas. There's all types of wonderful leadership material out there, but get enrolled, get a mentor, get somebody that you highly respect that will pour into you and challenge you. And number one, have a teachable spirit. I mean, and just be ready. As scripture tells us over and over again about what wisdom is, right? And having a teachable spirit is so vital. And that's the thing I would really encourage people to do is have a teachable spirit. I think it's one of the best characteristics we can have.
Troy Meachum, president of ACR Supply, thank you so much for sharing your journey into the corner office.
Thank you for having me, and I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.